Welcome back. This is video 3 for the Kitchen Witchery Ostara Quiche. As you can see, I kind of screwed up the crust. I made a point of saying, the recipe doesn't say to poke holes, but you always want to. I just realized I never completed that thought. Because otherwise what happens is these lovely air bubbles happen, and then I didn't poke enough holes in the bottom, and I totally forgot around the sides because making a video and all that jazz. Luckily with the quiche, I have made this mistake before, so sorry for the laughing and the coughing. So I found what will happen is the egg and milk bake will basically get in these cracks, but it will solidify. It will still work. But yes, if you're making a pie or something that doesn't have that more firm setting, so to speak, a filling, then you would basically need to start over if you did something like this because the whole thing is cracked. But luckily I am a noob. I have done this many times with forgetting to poke enough holes or not remembering to do the top part of the crust, only focusing on the bottom. It'll all still work with this particular food. So yeah, we are done frying up the ham and the onion. So now we just take that, and yes, there's going to be water, there's going to be condensation, it's fine, it will bake out. So we shake the camera vigorously as we're trying to get everything out of the bowl. So we get all that goodness in here, and while I'm doing this, it actually looks kind of pretty. It reminds me a lot of my Grandpa Allen's garden. He would have kind of these pinkish colored tulips and obviously the green grass and green stems. He loved gardening, so spring definitely makes me think of Grandpa Allen. My Grandpa Ray was a pseudo gardener, but he kind of just did lily of the valleys because they would propagate on their own. They would spread like wildfire. It was never really too much of an upkeep for him, but Grandpa Allen loved the upkeep. He really loved the ritual of planting and bringing those seeds inside during the winter and really nourishing them and bringing them to fruition, and then transplanting them outside so they could grow and become even more. And then some of those flowers that wouldn't be able to make it through the winter, covered up or what have you, he would then, bring them back inside. Or the ones that he knew weren't going to make it, period, and transplanting really, or bringing them back in didn't make sense, he would have to start from scratch. And he loved that. Those are the kind of things when I am cooking magically, I want to really remember fully and say aloud if possible, and I don't sound like a crazy person, which means if there aren't other people around, I will say the things aloud. I have actually had conversations in a way with my ancestors while I'm cooking, like, oh my gosh, Grandpa, do you remember when you did this? Oh my gosh, Auntie, do you remember when you did that? And just things like that. Or if I'm cooking something that was a handed down recipe from my great-grandmother who I didn't know that well, I might say, oh my gosh, Grandma Helen, I have no idea how you did this because this makes no sense to me. And when you build those relationships with the spirit realm, you can sometimes have that conversation and feel them laughing with you and feel them exchanging thoughts. And I understand that probably sounds cuckoo crazy, but it is very much an experience I've had. So yes, as you're spreading things around, as you're cooking things, if memories pop up, let those memories happen. Feel out those memories, because that is what is going to fuel your magic in the cooking. So the ham and onion mix are on the bottom of the pie crust. That can get pushed away. Now I'm going to try to adjust my camera a little bit. I am sorry if this goes a little woozy or wonky. We're gonna bring that over. Hopefully that'll stay. Yes, I have it propped on a Northeast box. High tech in this house, as you can see. It's what I have to try to anchor a camera over. Hopefully it doesn't fall into the cream. I didn't think that part through, but hopefully we'll be good. So now that the meat and the onions are made, I have given that remembrance and that honor to the animals that gave their life. I have focused on what each ingredient kind of means to me as I've incorporated it. Butter as well. Any dairy, I also do kind of give a thought to the animal that supplied it. Because again, I'm sorry you had to squeeze me for something that I can produce. I would want a little bit of loving. And there's a lot of things I could go into on dairy and animal treatment and such that aren't that great. So I really don't want to focus on the negativity, but just for me, my personal practice is anytime I'm cooking with dairy, I also give that honoring and that remembrance and that thought. Because whenever there's a possibility of negativity affecting my food, and I don't want it there, I want to make sure I honor that. I accept it, I acknowledge it, I honor it, and ask that, you know, it be released and not continue on in this form. So I hope that makes sense. So spread all that stuff on the bottom. Then we're going to take, I forgot about this part first. Oh my gosh, I am just, this poor crust. Oh my Atlanta. Thank you, Lily. As I knock over things. Thank you, honey. Okay, so next we are going to spread the lovely brie cheese. And I cut off most of the brine. If some people like the brine, I love the brine, so I left a little bit on there, but knowing that I have a 4-year-old that's going to eat it, the brine kind of gives it a little bit of bitterness. I like that contrast. She doesn't so much, so I cut off a good amount of it. So now we spread the brie over the meat mix. And again, I am doing this in a clockwise motion for a purpose. I want all the good warm fuzzies of this cheese to come through to me. Don't feel like you have to have it perfectly aligned because brie is going to spread a bit. You can dice it finer. I kind of just chunked it for the sake of time. But it will spread a little, sometimes not so much. So feel free to go as fine with the cutting as you wish. Cheese in and of itself is good for relationships. It aids with bringing about changes and accepting changes. It is a good food for love. Personally, I find that it connects me to lunar energy. Maybe it's that thought as a child that the moon was made out of cheese. I have no clue. But for some reason, when I want to work with the moon, I think cheese is a good food to bring about. It also, as with most dairy, it connects to the mother goddess archetype. It brings about ideas of nourishment, of encouragement. And actually, as I'm doing this, something is hitting me. Sacrifice. I seriously just heard something in my head go off and say, and sacrifice, because if any of you mothers know, dairy is what feeds the young. You definitely sacrifice for your young. You certainly give all that you can for them, even when they drive you nuts, like my child who's now rampaging in the background by slamming doors. So it's not only do you have the sacrifice that animal probably went through to produce the milk, to produce this cheese, but you have the idea of sacrifice that a mother gives. So definitely that is something to bring to the table as well. And as you go through, you'll notice that maybe some pieces are looking a little too big. You're not sure how it's going to spread. You can always go through and kind of chop them up and place them differently. There's nothing to say you can't. There's no right, there's no wrong. It works. Like I said, I like to go in a circular motion because I want to bring in all that good juju. But certainly if you were making something that you were having to spread out or lay out, that you were trying to get rid of or let go of something, you could certainly go in the counterclockwise motion as well. So yeah, that is that. Then after we have the brie spread all over, we want to sprinkle the grated Parmesan cheese. And again, I know I do kind of loopy loops in a clockwise motion. I'm not sure why, it's just something I've always done. But I don't think it affects the magic any differently. So I sprinkle the Parmesan. Again, we're working with cheese, so I'm thinking of the same kind of energy. Giving that honor, giving that respect, and finishing it up. Now, this is getting a little powerful. It's getting a little moundful on the outside, so I'm going to compress it down as much as possible because the egg bake still has to go over it, and I have had it happen before where I think the first few times I tried to make this, and it was my first few times making a quiche ever, I kept seeing it like barely coming to the top of the crust, so I kept adding more and more and it overflowed. So that is something to be mindful of. Again, if you're like me and have kind of mucked up the crust, don't feel too bad if it cracks further. It's going to be fine because the egg bake will actually work to firm it up. So that is kind of how it is looking. And I also kind of like, anytime I work with meat, especially, it feels masculine because for me, it connects to fire. It connects to that kind of aggressive energy. Not to mention the fact that, yeah, when you're dealing with meat, you're dealing with death, and that's kind of a more aggressive tone as well. I kind of like, again, even though, yes, with dairy, there is still that animal interaction. There is still that possibility of there being some not so good juju there. As a thing to work with in and of itself, cheese I find to be very feminine. It connects me to the mother energy. So I kind of like that gentle energy over the top of kind of the more aggressive and fiery energy. Dairy for me connects to, it kind of is a wish-wash because it does connect me to lunar energy. So I have that water element. It is a liquid when we're working with milk and cream. There is still a fire process put through with cheese. So, I mean, it certainly can take on that fire element as well. But for me, it really connects to earth also. So it's kind of this all-arounder. But regardless, it has a more soft and gentle feel for me. And again, that's a personal association. If you look at it and go, no, chick, you're wrong, it actually is even more aggressive than meat, and it is very fiery, or it connects to air. Whatever it is for you, no matter what no matter what any book says, no matter what any video says, you do you. If you work with something and it connects you to this, that, and the other thing, that's what you should do. So yeah, that is how the quiche is looking. And I'm going to set that off to the side. And then we're going to put this back up here again. Hope it doesn't fall because now we have the lovely cream. Again, cream is another dairy item, so we're having that same kind of feeling as connection to the goddess with her nurturing mother aspect. But we also have with it cream and milk. Both are good for abundance, fertility, creativity, which I love at this time of year. Creativity is such a great thing because we are now officially in the air part of the wheel. It also helps with happiness, money, and health. So all good juju. So those are things to think of as well. And again, I kind of like the application to the quiche because this is going over everything. So although you have the aggressiveness with the meat, although you have kind of this darker sacrifice, you have that fertility overflowing. You have that connection. And that is what is going to fill up this pie more than anything. So we've got the cream. Sorry, I'm just kind of getting my ducks in a row. We also want to combine the eggs. Again, I understand this is something that comes from an animal, but I'm focusing on the fact that it is the essence of life. It is rebirth. It is fertility. It is something to symbolize immortality and long life. It's a symbol of magic. It is, it kind of brings about the mystery of creation. The yolk can be a representative for the sun. So I kind of like that we're dealing with a lot of cheese for lunar energy, and then you have the sun with the yolk. But the egg also kind of represents all elements, if you think about it. The shell is the earth. You have the inner membrane, and that kind of connects to the air. You have the yolk, which stands for fire, and the white of the egg connects to water. So I really like that it is an all-in-one food as well. I am going to crack the egg over, so again, if there's anyone who's sensitive to that, I apologize. Please feel free to turn it off, look away, what have you. Eggshells also are really good to hang on to. Clean out, and you can grind them into a dust, which is amazing for protection. And we've got 4 eggs. So while I'm doing this, I'm thinking of all that stuff I just talked about, but I also kind of like that there are exactly 4, so I'm also thinking of those elements again. We've got earth, we've got air. There's one for fire. And the last one will help us to connect water. Oh, one more. There we go. So we have our 4 eggs in the cream. Next, we're going to add some nutmeg. Now, nutmeg, there are people that have to go by tablespoons or measuring spoons. Yeah, that's a thing when it comes to especially more physical items. I get that. When it comes to spices, I get to be a bit less measury and a bit more, I call it, I do my grandma's thing. I put some in the palm of my hand, and I go in a circular motion if I'm bringing it in, and I maiden, mother, crone it. So maiden, mother, and crone. Now that might be a lot of nutmeg. I understand that. I personally love nutmeg, so I have no issue with this. But you can adjust how big those handfuls or pinches or what have you are. And also, just because I do it that way doesn't mean you can't use a measuring spoon. It's just, it feels a bit more witchy to me, connected to me. It honors my family. Nutmeg, looking at those bad boy correspondences, we have luck. love, meditation. It's good for clairvoyance, divination, and drawing money. It connects to both fire and air. Personally, for me, this is kind of a personal finding. I like using it to create warmth and comfort. So it is one of my hearth and home spices. If I'm creating something for hearth and home, it has nutmeg in it. If I want to, get that Hestia energy in there, that is what I want. So now we start stirring it up, and again, I'm going in a docile manner, and I'm thinking of fertility, I'm thinking of abundance, I'm thinking of life, renewal, the land coming back. I'm thinking of the walks that I will take in nature. I'm thinking of gardening with my grandfather. I'm thinking of cooking with my great-grandmothers. I'm thinking of my aunts and the trips we would take in the summertime and the spring. I'm thinking of the light returning and those good times like that kind of coming back. All those memories, all that laughter, all those good times, all those warm fuzzies. That is what I want to bring in. That is what I want to remember. That is what I wish for this Ostara. I hope that this Ostara brings in warmth, love, life, and happiness. I hope good memories are made with this light of the year. I hope that with every negative act, there is a positive and even greater reaction. To counter it. Now, once that is done, it should look nice and smooth and creamy. And you're going to want to pour it over the quiche. I am going to do this off of camera because I want it right by me and to accommodate spillage, letting it kind of work its way into it, or at least the first pour. Okay. That looks like it's going down quite nicely. Of course, with all the cracks in the crust, of course it would. So yeah, you just kind of pour it over. I give it some time to absorb. I give it some time to kind of go in and find its way through. A great visual I have when I'm doing this is I think of rainwater when it's gushing out of the gutters around the house. How it always seems to find its way through the soil. It finds its way through the cracks, through the rocks, through the sediment. It finds its way into our mother where it needs to be. It finds where the nourishment needs to take place. It finds where the healing needs to take place. And that is what I envision while I am pouring this over. I'd love if I could get it done in 3, so it's that extra witchiness, but that has never happened. And I think that's about all we're going to be able to get in on this bad boy. Otherwise, we're going to have massive overflow. I already have a little bit of spillage coming over on this end. So yes, now that we have that, I see some little air bubbles kind of popping up. Let those happen. Let things kind of settle. Once you feel like it is good to go, everything's kind of settled. The cream and egg have found its way through the cracks and crevices of the quiche. You're going to want to put it in and bake for 30 minutes or until set. Then you let it cool slightly, cut into wedges, and serve. While this is setting, I will thank the elements. I will thank the ancestors. I will thank the Lord. I will thank the lady. I will thank any fate or good folk energy that I connected to while creating this. Again, I will thank any and all animals that sacrificed anything to give me the ingredients. I will thank them for giving sustenance and life and nourishment to me and my family. That is all things that I will think of as it is setting, just kind of as a last offering and honoring. Not offering, but honoring. But before I put it in the oven, I will lay my hands over it as well and give that final thought of what do I want this to represent. I kind of also like the quiche because the circle, it reminds me of the sun. The light is returning. It reminds me of the fact that after today, a day of great balance, a day of light and dark being equals, the light will begin to regain its power over the night. And warm will return. And the dark will begin to recede. And just kind of giving that last thought and that last meditation as the pie is ready to, or the quiche is ready to go into the oven, I think is really a wonderful, wonderful thing. So yeah, I will leave it here, and the last video will be of it being completely made. Blessed be.